For a place that is essentially a colossal, pitch black hole in the ground that stretches down for miles, the Underdark is strangely popular. I don't know why. Maybe it's the lack of sunshine, the constant threat of being turned into a snack, or the fact that the local architecture is mostly composed of jagged rocks and the calcified remains of adventurers who didn't pack enough torches. But day in and day out, people keep trekking down there. Today, we're going to ignore the let's go find loot aspect and actually look at the logistics of the Underdark's ecosystem. Because, spoiler alert, the food chain down there doesn't make sense, and the fact that anything manages to survive, let alone thrive, is a testament to how much reality in DD is held together by pure, unadulterated spite. Let's be honest, if you look at the Underdark as a biological entity, it is a starving, broken machine. The prime material plane has the sun, the ultimate battery. It makes the plants grow, the plants feed the herbivores, and the herbivores feed the carnivores. It's a nice, simple cycle. You go down into the Underdark, and suddenly the sun is gone. That means the plants are gone. No grass, no trees, no photosynthesis. So, what the hell are they eating down there? You'd think the answer is each other, and yes, that's a huge part of it, but you can't have an ecosystem where the only thing being eaten is the thing doing the eating. That's just a mathematical death spiral. So, how does this actually work? Well, it's all about the weird, magical, and frankly illegal stuff that happens when you don't have sunlight. You have your fungi, your lichens, and your glowing mosses. These things don't need the sun, they feed on geothermal energy, magical radiation, or the literal decay of everything else. It's a world built on rot. Everything is a decomposer. If you die in the Underdark, you aren't just a corpse, you are a primary energy source for the next 3 weeks of the local ecosystem. And that's just the bottom of the food chain. When you scale up, things get even more whack, as I like to call it. Take the deep gnomes or the drow. They aren't exactly out there farming organic kale. Are they? They've got their mushrooms, sure, which, let's be real, probably taste like wet cardboard in despair, but they're constantly forced to raid the surface just to get a decent meal. Even the deep-dwelling aberrations, those monstrosities that don't bother with raiding, are basically living in a permanent state of caloric deficit. They're essentially existing on a crash diet that would make a Victorian orphan look well-fed. I've seen some DMs try to map out an Underdark food chain, and they usually end up with a map that looks like a bowl of spaghetti where every single arrow points to player characters. And honestly? Fair. That's usually the only sustainable source of high-quality protein in the entire damn place. But let's look at the monsters. Why are there so many things like purple worms? Have you seen a purple worm? It's the size of a train. It moves by eating the rock. If a purple worm needs to eat constantly to sustain its massive, wormy bulk, it's essentially a mobile landfill. It creates tunnels, sure, but it's constantly consuming everything in its path. It is the apex predator, the gardener, and the bulldozer all at once. And what eats the purple worm? Nothing. When a purple worm dies, it becomes a literal continent of food for the smaller scavengers. It's a feast that lasts for years. That is how the Underdark sustains its high-level monsters, by having a few massive, world-breaking entities that, when they die, basically subsidize the entire biome for a generation. Then there's the water. The Underdark has these massive, subterranean seas. And because it's DD, these aren't just normal seas, they're filled with things that make the ocean look like a bathtub. You've got your aquatic aboleths, your deep krakens, and a whole host of things that were never meant to be seen by mortal eyes. These water sources are the arteries of the Underdark. They circulate the nutrients, the magical waste, and the occasional unlucky party of adventurers across the entire landscape. Without these dark, cold, and utterly horrifying currents, the Underdark would dry up and die. And don't even get me started on the magic. The Underdark is highly saturated with magical radiation. It leaks from the plains, it seeps out of the crust, and it's essentially a free-form energy source for the flora and fauna. Some creatures, like the Mind Flayers, don't even bother with traditional biology anymore. They rely on psionics, which is just magic by a different name. They don't need the sun because their power is internal, derived from the minds of the sapient beings they harvest. They've bypassed the food chain entirely. they'd hack the ecosystem. So, living in the Underdark is essentially living on a dying planet where you're surrounded by starving gods, radioactive mushrooms, and things that haven't eaten a square meal in a century. It's a logistical nightmare. You have to account for light, temperature, the fact that the walls themselves might be alive, and the constant, crushing pressure of being in a space where you are quite literally at the bottom of the world. And yet, people still go down there. They go for the gold, they go for the lore, and they go because they're adventurers. But next time you're down there, maybe spare a thought for the ecosystem. It's working really hard to keep you from starving, even if it's currently trying to digest you. Anyways, that's enough of me rambling about the dark and the damp. Back to the business of why you're here. If you enjoyed this little deep dive into the miserable reality of subterranean survival, consider hitting those buttons. It helps the channel, and it keeps me from having to go find a job that requires me to be in the sun. Which, let's be real, would be a disaster for everyone involved. See you in the next one.